I have a roommate since November. Now she's a minister, and she just was hired at a church, so it's her first church, her first call. And I love having somebody that I can pray with in the house. That's amazing. Then there's the bathroom. So, we have different styles relating to living and the bathroom. You see this little red circle here? That's makeup. And I'm pretty sure that's not mine. And you see the drawer? That's open.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I didn't leave it open.
Princess did it.
Just waiting order.
And I didn't leave it open. And I walked into the bathroom in the morning and there's makeup on the counter and the drawer's open. Which is often a problem for me. It's often not just the drawer is open. It's she left the drawer open on purpose to irritate me. This is how our brains, and this is not me uniquely, right? You guys are laughing because you recognize you have your own reactions to what people do that you think is out to get you.
We have different forms.
So, the point here, which we learned a few weeks ago, is this notion of the snake or stick conundrum, the survival mental. Our brain is designed to have a negativity bias in order to protect us. So if you see a snake in the road, or you see a stick in the road and you mistake it for a snake, that's a good thing, because it's good to be wrong on the negative side to make sure you're safe. That's our brain, that's our biology. We're protected that way. It's down in the lower brainstem, so it's like, oh, it's just a stick, well then I'm okay. But if you mistook a snake for a stick and tried to pick it up, you'd get bit and you would die. So that's why our brain helps us survive. That's a good thing. But that function needs something to do when you're not walking around dealing with survival. So even in the drawer being open, there's a negativity bias, like she's out to get me. And I don't think it's just me, because you were laughing, so you all can resonate with that thing. So the notion of having a negativity bias and then seeing something, taking the worst possible version of it, is something that is part of our human condition. It's part of who we are. And so I was talking to Reverend Meredith. This is not my roommate, that's the woman who spoke a few weeks ago, and she goes, we're talking about this very issue. We're like talking about preparing for the sermon. She goes, well, did you talk to her about it? She goes, because I have a roommate. She also has a roommate. She goes, I have a roommate who's staying with me. She's a flight attendant, so she's not there on the weekends. She lives in Phoenix, but she stays with me when she's flying. And she leaves her dishes in the sink. Okay, so she leaves her dishes in the sink, and she goes, and I kept praying on it, and I kept praying on it, I kept praying on it to let it be. And I finally, what Spirit told me was, talk to her. So I talked to her. I said, I hear you, but that's not the message I'm getting from my version of Spirit. My version of Spirit is that's not even me having the reaction, it's mostly my mom. Saying something like, you're never going to learn to pick up after yourself, are you? So I actually channel that as I'm watching the drawer being opened. And so in my prayer and in my meditation, what I've been getting to is just close the drawer. Just close it. Shh. Don't react to it, just close it. And takes 2 seconds. Just close the door. It's done. It's closed. Because for me to be someone who's going to change her particular behavior about this particular thing versus me working on my own reaction to it, if I didn't care that the drawer was open, I walk in the morning, it's open, it takes a nanosecond. You know what a nanosecond is? It's not even a whole second. It's a fraction of a second. It takes a fraction of a second to close the drawer. If the door's open, close the drawer. Boom. Very grounded and centered. As opposed to, oh my gosh, she didn't close the drawer again. And my whole morning starts off with my negativity bias setting the tone for my day. So I know it's a simple example, but it's actually pertinent to this going the second mile. She is asking me, she's forcing me to confront the condition of the bathroom, which for me is just like somebody forcing one to go a mile. And not only do I go the second mile, not only do I close the drawer, but I wipe the counter. Close the drawer, wipe the counter. Close the drawer, wipe the counter. It's a practice. It's a meditation. Close the drawer, wipe the counter. Close the drawer, wipe the counter. As opposed to letting myself react to this thing that I think is being done to me. There's this, and when I've been talking to other people about this quote and this topic, when you think about the quote, Jesus said, if somebody forces you to go 1 mile, go the second mile. There is some implications in that quote that we have to hear. Like if a parent says to a child, don't go near the street, there's not just, I'm trying to control your behavior from the street, I'm trying to protect you from dying. There's an implication more than just the instructions, right? So that the go the second mile, the implication for go the second mile is that you're stingy. Jesus is talking to people who are grumpy about going the 1 mile. I'm not saying it's true, I wasn't there to hear him, but I'm saying consider it. That if he's saying, if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go the second mile. There's some dialogue happening. It's like, well, I don't, and at this time there were people that were slaves that were coming to hear Jesus speak. So the slave mentality of, I don't want to do what my master wants me to do. I'm being forced to do this thing I don't want to do. So consider that we are stingy, and we're also stingy with ourselves. We are not particularly generous with ourselves in our positive affirmations about what we say about ourselves. I listen to some of you when you talk to me, and you talk and you depreciate yourself. Some people say, oh, I don't want to bother you for your time. What are you saying about you that you're saying that I don't want to be bothered with your time? And that's more, there's not just one person here. There's several people have said that to me. I don't want to bother you. I don't want to feel like a bother to you. No, you got an issue and you want to talk about it, that's what I'm here for. So we're stingy. So Jesus is saying, don't be stingy, go the second mile. He's also saying, don't have a reaction to the first one in the first place. Don't react to the first one. In slave mentality, if we were on a slave ship in Roman days, and we're shackled to the boat and we're rowing, that's our job, right? We've been conscripted and we're rowing. There's an agreement amongst the slaves. The agreement amongst the slaves is don't row. Even though we're rowing. The agreement is don't row, unless they're forcing us. Imagine if a new slave was put on board the deck, right? And said, hey, good morning, this is great. I get to see the whole world by this, this is going to be a great job. The rest of the slaves would kill him or make him be quiet very quickly. Because we're being oppressed is part of that mentality. I'm being oppressed by this thing that you're making me do. I'm being forced to do something that I don't want to do. The agreement is don't do it. And if you came along, we're all happy about it. So, and culturally, we've inherited that in our traditions. Our Western traditions have inherited out of the Judeo-Christian mentality. The Judeo-Christian timeline comes from oppressed people who say, we are not where we want to be, there's some other better place to be. It happened to be Jerusalem for the Jews. And what do they say at the end of every Passover meal? Next year, Jerusalem. Why? Because this ain't it. This isn't the good place. Jerusalem's the good place. And that got completely translated down into our religious practices of this ain't it. Heaven's not here. Heaven's over there. We'll get there some other day. The notion of go the second mile is be cheerful in what you're doing right now. Have what you're doing be a meditation that blesses you to the point where you don't even have a reaction to it, and then you'll do too. Now, some people, when I'm talking to them and they're not advanced in this idea of new thought, their reaction will be extreme, and they'll want to use an extreme example to disprove that this is a valid theological concept. Did this several times during this discussion with people. All right, what if somebody is pointing a gun to your head, telling you to kill your mother with a gun? Okay, then the analogy breaks down. In that case, it doesn't work. In that case, the idea of going the second mile isn't only, if you were to translate, it's like, what are you going to kill your mother and then kill your brother as well? No, that's not what we're saying at all. We're not saying that at all. And the notion of a philosophical or religious truth or lesson is to take it and apply it not to the hypothetical extreme, but to your personal life. To your personal life, where is it that you don't go the second mile? Where is it that you're stingy? And you don't have to tell me personally, but you want to reflect on that for yourself. Where is it that you say, I'm not doing that? You're not the boss of me. You can't make me. Those conversations, if you ever hear them, they're from our 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old self. They're not from our adult self where we say, this does not cost me anything. It doesn't cost me anything to close the drawer. It costs me nothing. I mean, it does take a little ounce of energy to do that, but it's more about being centered and grounded and not reacting to the thing that I think that somebody did to me because they're out to get me, because none of that's true. All of that stuff that I made up in my head. She left the drawer open. Close it. Wipe down the counter. And say nothing. And Meredith didn't agree with me. Meredith said, well, in my life, I'm going to have that conversation. And that's fine. That's fine if you're going to have that conversation. But don't do it in a reaction mode. Don't do it in a reaction mode. Have a conversation that sounds like this. I'd like to have a particular way that we're going to deal with the bathroom. I'd like that. That would be what I would like. Not, you always. You hear yourself in that? You always? We go to the absolute. You always leave the drawer open. There's and you're inconsiderate that comes along for the caboose that we don't actually say out loud. So instead of the reaction, instead of the caboose of you're inconsiderate, start to reflect on where can I be more generous? Where can I be more generous in life? Where I would normally react to something that somebody is doing, and I can actually let it be. I can let it be, and I can close the drawer. I can let that happen, and I don't have to react. If you're seeing a place in your life where this applies, so let me see your hand. Okay, good. So the practice is to let things be the way they are when it seems like you're being forced, when it seems like you're being coerced, when it seems like you're being judged. We're going to let those things just be the way they are and not react. And if you react, catch yourself in the act. Catch yourself in the act of reacting. Catch yourself in the act of getting upset. There is no profit in my being upset. None. No profit in me letting myself get upset by the thing that happened. There's no profit for me emotionally. There's no profit intellectually. Where the profit lies is for me to allow myself to be centered, grounded, and not react when somebody does something that I think is being done to me, and say, okay, I can let this in my life to the point where I'm not going to react, to the point where if I could go the second mile, to the point where I could wipe the counter down, close the drawer, wipe the counter down. It's a kind of Zen. There's a Zen phrase that says, carry water, chop wood. Close the drawer, wipe the counter. It's my version. It's my Zen start for the morning. Close the drawer, wipe the counter. This was in the Alameda Sun this week. Dear editor, I went for a run the other morning, but I didn't want to carry my keys, so I left them by the dumpster of my building. Of course, not a good idea, but I figured dumpster diving isn't really popular in Alameda. So I would be safe. When I returned from my run, the keys were nowhere to be found. I looked hard and in vain. I went inside dejected at the thought of having to replace my keys. I moved here from New York. I figured I should just go out and make sure my car was still parked outside my place. So this is somebody who lives in an apartment building and parks on the street, not like in a garage, right? Much to my surprise, on the seat of my car, under a note from Danny and Don, who turn out my sanitation workers, were the keys. So the keys are on the seat under a note. Danny and Don had left a note. They had walked a block or more from my dumpster, pushing the electronic car key until they found my car. I was so impressed with their kindness and goodness in a world that seems to be increasing in our distrust of others. I thought it would be good to publish the news that goodness continues. How much did that really cost Danny and Don? Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes? How long does it take you to walk a block? So the amount of time that it took Danny and Don to do that act of kindness was insignificant, but it also left somebody lifted up because of their action. So we have a reading for today. So read this with me and we'll say it slowly. When I find myself resisting anything, I relax and know that I am in the flow. When I find myself resenting anyone, I relax and know that I am in the flow. I neither resist nor resent anything or anyone. I am in the flow. I am the flow. And so it is. And continuing on. Like Danny and Don, the good sanitation workers of Alameda, I go the second mile for others, joyfully, willingly, responsibly. And so it is. Thank you. Good morning.